the rebuilding of the third temple, is that a Christian idea? Can Christians embrace that? We're going to take a look at a few different things, and I'm going to give my viewpoint, which I hope is received well. This is Tucker Carlson, and he got into it, and he kind of lambasted as Christian Zionism, which a lot of people do now, but I think it might be a misunderstanding of it. But let's just hear from Tucker.
The building of the third temple. But it's not just Hasidic groups from Brooklyn, and it's not just IDF soldiers. There are amazingly a lot of American evangelical leaders, Christian Zionists, whose main point is rebuilding the third temple. Now, how could an American Christian or any Christian call for the building of a temple whose inherent presence denies Christ? Who said clearly, and Christians believe this, it's a core point of faith, I am the temple. You want to speak to God, you speak through me. That's Christianity. That's the whole religion right there. So if you're a Christian preacher calling for the rebuilding of the third temple, you kind of missed the whole point.
Okay, I'm just going to stop it right there, and we're going to dive into this, because I think that is the natural viewpoint that a lot of Christians had, probably the viewpoint I would have had when I became a Christian. And I think it is a misunderstanding. And I had to go through a lot of different things to kind of come to this realization. And it's not to say that I have everything correct, but Christians in general of understanding, because there's a lot of things that go against our natural belief. Because when we read the scriptures and we understand how we're doing Christianity today, a lot of it doesn't align. And it comes to this viewpoint where we think that when Jesus came, then that the New Testament was there as well. And they just were living off the New Testament. Forget about the Old Testament. When Jesus and the apostles were here on earth, there was no New Testament. They were the Bible and the scriptures that they lived by was the Old Testament, was the law, was what was given to them. So to say that they had just completely done away with, Jesus was starting something and completely new and forget about everything, that goes against, really, if you dive into it, what he preached and taught and what the apostles taught. I'm going to read this is from Acts chapter 6. And this is when Stephen, the first martyr of the Christian church, the Jewish leaders were defaming him and slandering him and mischaracterizing what he was preaching so that they could get him killed. It says, and they set up false witnesses who said, "This man never ceases to speak words against this holy place and the law. For we have heard him say that this Jesus of Nazareth will destroy this place and will change the customs that Moses delivered to us." Right there, people think that's obviously what Stephen was saying. That's what he was saying, because that's what these slanderers and false witnesses were saying. They were mischaracterizing his whole point. There was something drastically new that changed when Jesus came, but they didn't completely do away with the sacrificial system. They didn't completely do away with the temple. Jesus said he's the fulfillment of it, but it doesn't do away with that. There was a necessity, a real thing I just see that a lot of people think that God, he commands something, but he also hates what he commands. He delivers laws and prescriptions of how things are to be done, but then he, at the same time, hates those prescriptions that he gives. No, those are good and holy and righteous and true. The commanding of the third temple, or not, the commanding of just the temple in general, was a good commandment. So to say, like, I'm not saying that we just need to build a third temple, but I'm not saying that the temple in general is a bad thing. It is a good thing. It is a way why we in this temporal time can draw near to God. That's God's judgment on Jerusalem and destroying the third temple was because of their rejection of the Messiah. But it's not to say that the temple in general is bad. That's where I think people go off and misunderstanding about this. And I'm going to read this last thing. This is from Acts. This changed my worldview. It's when it clicked. This is in Acts 21, when Paul, who is a Jew, a Torah-observant Jew, that people are slandering him and saying that he is saying to do away with the law, do away with the whole sacrificial system, the temple, and all of it's bad. And it was exactly the opposite. There is a thing that's going on where Paul's message is saying Gentiles can become a part of God's people, and they don't need to become Jewish. They can stay Gentiles, and they don't have to go under the yoke of the law. And in the Acts 21, verse 24, They're telling the Apostle Paul, take these men and purify yourself along with them and pay their expenses so that they may shave their heads. Thus all will know that there is nothing in what they have been told about you, but that you yourself also live in observance of the law. But as for the Gentiles, there's a difference, the Jews and the Gentiles. But as for the Gentiles who have believed, we have sent a letter with our judgment that they should abstain from what has been sacrificed to idols, and from blood, and from what has been strangled, and from sexual immorality. Then Paul took the men, and the next day he purified himself along with them and went into the temple, giving notice when the days of purification would be fulfilled and the offering presented for each one of them. So Paul, Jews keep the law. Gentiles, they're not obligated with all the prescriptions of the law. And I think this is what messes up a lot of Christian people, because when we read the Old Testament, how do we understand it? Because we're not living by all that. And is it to say, oh, we have to mischaracterize it and say Jesus did away with all of it? He didn't, but it applies differently between Jews and Gentiles. All right, we'll leave it at that. Follow me on X and Instagram at Brandon Fogel. Smash that like button and have a great rest of your day.
I could see the cracks form in the paint, growing like a